What's up, guys? Welcome to Tech and Flow. I'm your host, Xavier Gray. Meet my co-host, Shelby Reynolds. The aim of this podcast is to explore the world of tech, discuss trends, interview successful tech entrepreneurs and software engineers. We hope you find this podcast enjoyable. Thank you for listening. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Thank you for joining us today. This is the very first run of hopefully many more.
Hey, we hope to be back in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, when we're all more rich, right? So this podcast is kind of interesting because it's something that I've been interested in doing for a while, and I've heard a number of people talk about it. And ultimately, this wonderful woman right here is definitely the brains behind all of it, and it took her and I connecting here in this wonderful place that we're in right now to
you love coming here.
actually make this happen. So you guys are a part of the first one, and definitely excited about that.
Sounds good.
So
guys, welcome to our new podcast. This is episode 1, and let's go ahead and start by introducing ourselves. I'm Shelby Reynolds, and this is my wonderful partner,
Xavier Gray.
Yes. And go ahead and speak into your mics clearly and tell me your full names.
So Anthony Gonzalez.
Awesome. Welcome.
Giancarlo Molina.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I'm going to let Xavier start off by getting the interview going, but we're having you both on the show. You're complete strangers, right? You guys have never met.
Nope.
We're doing a double interview right now, which is really fun and interesting, and we'll see how it goes. So go ahead and start us off, Xavier.
Man, that's intense.
You just laid it down like this is how it's gonna go.
Exactly. So I would say to start out with, you've said your names, but why don't you introduce the audience to who you guys are, what your day-to-day life looks like.
All right. You want to start?
I'll take the honors. So my name, Anthony Gonzalez. I own Solvera IT. We are an IT managed service company, and we focus on helping businesses become more profitable and efficient. That's our goal. That's how we separate ourselves from other IT MSPs. And we're looking forward to doing a lot of business out here in Orlando with a lot of new clients over the next year, expanding out our marketing, getting some information, and really just helping business owners grow.
Now, for the audience, Anthony was a guy that I met at a networking event probably 8 months ago, 6 months ago, somewhere in there, and he and I have stayed in contact, and I actually was just on his podcast last week.
That's
so
awesome.
It's pretty cool.
What's it called? What's your podcast called?
Business Tech Connect.
Okay, that's so catchy. I like it.
Thank you. It's
All right.
funny because Xavier pointed out last week on the podcast, it's actually BTC for Bitcoin.
Oh.
Like, it wasn't intentional, but it just so happened to be that way. So I
Another
was
tech
like, Yeah, tech references, but
Yep.
Tech money.
Tech on tech on tech.
Yeah.
precisely.
What you got, G?
All right. So my name again is Giancarlo Molina. So yeah, my life in tech. I'm a mobile developer for the Golf Channel. So my job is to mainly do their app, and I help out with the other apps for the Golf Channel umbrella, which is Golf Now stuff mainly.
It's awesome. So how long you been doing that for?
I've been there for almost 3 years now. I'm a senior mobile engineer.
Okay, cool. And so you said apps, so you're working with their applications?
Yeah, so I do the iOS and Android applications, but we build them with a new platform called Xamarin, which is something that got bought out by Microsoft recently. So it helps developers build their iOS and Android a lot faster.
That's awesome. So I want to start on a more challenging note. I think people avoid the challenging things sometimes, but why don't we talk first? In recent day-to-day experience, and this year, we're approaching an end of the year. We're in the end of the year, approaching a new year. What has been maybe the biggest challenge or the most difficult project that you guys have worked on this year?
I went first last time. It's all you, man.
All right. So
He's keeping track.
Right, the biggest challenge I've had to face. So recently we rewrote the Golf Channel app recently and launched it out, and obviously usually when you put something new out, users typically don't like it at first. So we're just going back and iterating through and fixing the things that they were really complaining about. So that took a bit because at the same time you always have the business as they have their priorities and they want their thing. So it's finding a balance of doing both and making a good product in the end for that everybody can enjoy.
Yeah. Why was that so challenging though?
Well, because there were some issues with the technical challenges, especially on the video player side. Since we are part of the Comcast umbrella, there were some internal issues that came through because of that. So it delayed us like a few months in terms of dev work, just because somebody said no. So there were some challenges on that and trying to meet the deadlines. So we had to cut a few features, which obviously the users would have wanted or would have improved the experience. So, like I said, it's finding a balance in the end.
Oh, awesome. Bureaucracy in business. Gotta love it. Yeah.
Not
that
so
usually
much.
tends to be the kink in things sometimes. You have to go through layer upon layer upon layer, and you're just like, if I could just do this myself, then it might be
dealing with other people, the other stakeholders, as we call them in the biz, is the difficult part of my job, because sometimes they're not as understanding. They're usually non-tech people, or they're usually business, marketing, sales, so they don't have an understanding of their requests or the scale of the request or just what they're asking for, and then we go try to hit back with the requirements and let's a good timeline for us to do it, and they're like, oh no. So there's challenges always in different levels.
Well, so what are you saying that that's the most challenging thing is what would you say is the most challenging situation you've had specifically with somebody higher up?
Just
without getting you in trouble, of course, but what's an example of something that's not understood by people you have to deal with that is a typical request?
So a typical request would be so we have a lot of editorial staff creating articles and stuff. So they like to do it all linking or scripting to other social media sites and want to post Facebook or Instagram, and that's fine, understandable. But sometimes they go overboard and put a lot of them into one article, which obviously slows down the whole experience.
Right.
So that's something we want to avoid and causes issues for us, but they continuously do it even though we repeatedly tell them not to. So it's things like that that we try to manage.
Totally. I know I worked in graphic design for a long time, and I had a similar issue with higher ups because you would tell them oh, you want me to pump out 200 ads by the end of tomorrow, and you're and you also want them to look good. You want them to be branded correctly and consistent.
Yep,
and you're
exactly.
But on top of my other 15 projects I'm doing, I totally understand. I'm right there with you.
And then the worst part is oh, how long have you known about this? Oh, I've known this for a month, that I've wanted this for a month or two, and you're telling me this now? That's usually when I start getting really mad, because it's we have a flow, usually non-business people don't understand is that developers, especially software developers and even mechanical engineers, they usually have months of work already planned out ahead of time. So when you're coming to them telling them, I want something done now, it's kind of like telling them to drop everything they've planned ahead of time to just kind of facilitate you. And usually better software developers will allocate themselves some time for those kind of requests.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're in that kind of environment.
Because they know, yeah.
It's going to happen.
It sounds similar to a conversation I was having recently with a marketing person, and we were talking about the whole challenge between sales professionals and marketing professionals. And obviously the whole social media, app developers, people like that kind of fall more on the marketing side. They're not necessarily the sales side, which is traditionally more the business side. Mm-hmm. And, me personally, I'm definitely more on the sales side and definitely not on the marketing side. And so it's, I can only imagine the conflict there.
There's definitely a miscommunication typically between those two, and they have to work together closely most of the time. Yep. So it's fun seeing that little dance, and if a company can do it really well, then they're going to succeed in the long run, and they're not going to have a high turnover rate and whatnot. But so that's really awesome. Thank you for that insight. Did you? What was your most challenging?
I would say it's two things. One was moving our company that already existed for almost 3 years to Orlando. So that was a challenge. And I would say the second, I guess, project-wise, we helped one of our clients we've had for over 2 years pretty much build a whole new campus. So the entire gambit, new computer lab, another 100 plus computers for them, a new networking setup, 13 new access points, and then combining both of the networks together. So if you went from one school to another, they had to work simultaneously. Mm-hmm. So I think it was definitely one of the most challenging ones, but it was also the most fun because that's the kind of stuff I love. So for me, it's like, cool, give me a challenge, like make it hard, make it fun, and seeing the end result of it over time has been really cool. So I think, like I said, moving, pretty much starting at a new location, that's definitely challenging, but it's also kind of rewarding because it lets you sort of redevelop yourself as a new company in a new place and meet new people like yourselves. Like, I couldn't have done this back there. So
yeah. I was about to say, I'm like, it sounds like you've probably learned a lot in the process about like what you're capable of, as well as like what it takes to start something like that. So that's really cool. Like, I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah. So I guess the major decision point was we were in Pensacola, Florida, and we wanted to expand out the business, and so we decided that Orlando would be a good place to do that. There's a lot of cool tech happening here. There's a lot of cool activities here. It's grown up so much since I lived here.
I know, isn't it cute? Our little town is growing.
I'm like, man, Orlando, you have bikes now? What?
Well, they're still growing though.
I left Miami because it was growing too much, and I moved to Orlando. I'm like, it's growing too. Like, what is
that? They literally erect a brand new apartment building like every other month now. It's crazy.
I love it.
But
I'm excited.
That was a huge reason why we wanted to move here, was because it's just got so much potential, so many things that are happening now that, I mean, I think all of us, there are big cities, San Francisco, New York, cities like Atlanta that have a lot going on, like humongous. But I think Orlando is able to keep up with them and provide everything you need in a city for pretty much everyone, and allow enough business growth that you can come here right now, start a business, and be extremely successful with the amount of growth that we have. So
I think that's a perfect segue. So that kind of goes into like sort of trends. So, you have all these little new tech hubs. I guess Austin's not really new, but you've got Austin.
Texas has definitely been growing for a bit now.
Oh.
Yeah, you've got some areas in Arizona that are really starting to spring up a little bit more. Obviously, you've got Silicon Valley, you've got even New York, and there's a lot of software engineers there. So what are maybe some of the trends that you're seeing, not necessarily specifically in Orlando, but maybe specifically in Orlando with industries that are really evolving and using more tech, or companies that are tech companies?
Oh, my turn. I would say.
I think they're both keeping count now.
Yeah.
We're both tech people.
I'm waiting for the lose track.
We started at 0,
Yeah, right. Even it out.
I would say that, at least from the IT side of things, automation is a huge thing that's going on right now. That's one thing that we focus on a lot at Solvera. I would say another one is cybersecurity. Going into 2020, people need to get their stuff together. I mean, it's not even a joke anymore. There are city halls and there are governments that are getting attacked, cybersecurity attacks, stuff like that, and they're spending a lot more than a small, medium-sized business. And so it's just the only thing that separates, the small business from them is there's a lot more complex things going on. So it's really hard for them to do. On a small, medium-sized business, you set it up correctly, you have a pretty good infrastructure. So I think cybersecurity, automation, and I think that connection that, software is becoming a huge push too. Businesses should really start taking a look at investing in software as a tool. And I think what you and I were talking about earlier is long-term view. Software is not something that you just jump on and 3 months later you have a grandiose thing that's going to make your business work magic.
Definitely not.
It's a process. But that process over time, just like building your business, just like growing your business, just like marketing, no matter what it is, it takes time. So I would say that would be another big thing I would suggest 2020. Look into that stuff. And Orlando has everything here needed to do all three of those things.
I want to go to the cybersecurity piece just because, you hear about it started with like Facebook and them actually going to, the federal government and getting, basically chastised for their privacy policies.
Yep.
I think I get a notification in my email probably twice a week that some company that I subscribe to has updated their privacy policy. So let's speak for a second a little bit more to like that whole cybersecurity and strategies or whatever.
As a software dev, I would definitely say as a business standpoint, security is usually the last thing they think about or invest time or money into, because they're usually worried about the feature sets and getting all the functionality they want initially out. So it's understandable it gets cut usually at the end, but you're right, it is a very important feature, because once you're screwed over, by these hackers, you're potentially very liable in a very much bigger legal way or in other facets.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an issue for businesses to try to keep up, and then to always continuously maintain good security standards, because it's also evolving. The security industry is continuously coming up with new standards and new ways of fighting off hackers.
Yeah. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like kind of going along that line for a second, you know, there's obviously, I think, some industries you think of maybe like the medical system or financial systems, or some of those that are, you know, regulated amongst themselves, that there's a need for that privacy. You know, you've got HIPAA from medical, and you know, financial documents or legal documents have a certain track of how they have to be protected. But I think what's kind of interesting, and this is again my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of these companies, they're tech companies. Their product is tech. Their product is not medical, or their product's not legal or financial or whatever, and then they're using tech, but their product is tech. So maybe the emphasis, the legislation, the whatever, the rules maybe aren't there. Is that?
Yeah, potentially some legislation could come into play to help, you know, force companies to be more security conscious, you would say. But yeah, it definitely is startling to see a lot of these tech companies, like you were saying, to be, you know, so open to attacks like that. It's not very, doesn't give you a lot of confidence as a consumer in those companies, and that's another issue that they have to live with, is that now they took a huge PR hit, and people lose confidence in using their products or putting their valuable information on their products.
And to go off of that too, one of the reasons why you hear about the big businesses that are getting attacked and having these issues is because they realize that a lot of businesses don't even know. And that, I think that's the scary part,
Point, yeah.
is that you have so many businesses that I've probably worked with over 35, 40 businesses over the last 3 years in different things, and we've helped them out in a lot of ways, but they don't have the infrastructure. Their job is, hey, we want to build this business for our customers and for our business to grow and do all this stuff, but you don't even know. You know, you can have just a little malware thing sitting on your computer, just taking all your stuff. Like there was a great example made by Sophos the other day, which is a huge industry leader, I think, in open source firewall tools.
Yep.
And so they posted a cool video. I guess I'll sum it up in 10 seconds, but software development team was given access to this new tool. They gave the tool to the software developers. Everyone had the same password. One of the software developers took the computer home. One of their software developers' kids took it, tried to install a game on it, installed a virus which had a malware tracker on it. That went back into the office, and then the people, like the bots, were talking back and saying like, "Hey,
password
here's
sharing
all
is
this
so
password
bad."
stuff." And then next thing you know, all the passwords for their entire database, all the software, everything they were working for was just out in the open, and was able to get stolen. So I think at some level, yeah, there's certain things, but it's a responsibility of the business for the business, and it's a responsibility for the business for the clients and the customers. The same way a big hack like the Equifax, the same exact sort of thing is,
it's a mess.
You have a responsibility, and yeah, just because you turn your blind eye to it doesn't mean it's not happening. So 2020, we have to step it up as a community, as a country, as a nation, as a world, to fight back against that stuff, because it really is important, and it shouldn't be at the bottom of the list anymore.
Well, for sure. But that just comes to educating the general populace on how good security facets, not just in terms of tech, but just how your behaviors could affect you.
So you made a lot of interesting points, Anthony, and I think that obviously sprung some conversation, particularly the whole privacy thing. That tends to be a pretty hot topic right now,
especially nowadays.
Yeah. What are some trends or things that you're seeing maybe in your industry?
On my side, I definitely, being part of the NBC umbrella, I'm seeing the whole streaming war, since we're now releasing Peacock soon. So I've definitely seen some of the back end even before they announced. So I was privy to that knowledge beforehand. So it's a big project, because obviously privacy is a concern in that regard as well. So they're taking their time and making sure they got a good product out. So I'm excited to see what they put out in the end.
I remember when streaming was just so simple, and it was just getting started, and the whole thing surrounding...
It was just Netflix, really.
Yeah, the whole thing surrounding streaming was piracy. That was like really the only concern. And then it was like, you've got Netflix, even YouTube you could almost put into that streaming service kind of world.
Yeah.
I think YouTube was probably the first, major
short form video
mover in that direction.
For
yeah.
sure. Remember when Netflix used to do DVDs?
Oh,
and everyone made fun of them for trying to
Yeah.
videos on the internet.
They still
On the
do,
internet, yeah.
but who gets them?
Actually, some people like the only Blockbuster still left is really in Alaska, from what I heard.
they got
Yeah,
one left.
Wow.
because they don't have access to good internet, so they need actual copies of stuff to watch.
Can you imagine?
Well, I mean,
I can't imagine.
Now I'm good.
I mean, I used to
Did
remember
you know they're like
going to
also this-
Blockbuster or like getting the DVDs in the mail. That was a time, man.
sorry to everybody that lives in Alaska out there. You know, us in Florida.
Maybe
we're
if you
sorry
think
for
about
you.
it, Redbox is still a thing.
I was gonna say, yeah, Redbox has really done a really interesting thing.
They just took the Blockbuster and put it into a vending machine. Like,
Yeah, but even Redbox is struggling now too.
Well, because now you see them even releasing their streaming platform. Now you can rent the movies online. Or
well, that's kind of
reserve
like
the
what
movies.
YouTube is doing too. YouTube has been renting movies for a long time. Yeah, the
Yeah.
whole streaming and getting everything digitized is a big platform. The issue now that a lot of consumers are running into is that now we gotta pick which platforms we want, because nobody's gonna pay $100 between all these different streaming services.
Redbox's demographic is the lower class because people who can't afford internet or cable or anything like that who want to watch a movie, they typically go spend $1 or $2 on a couple movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Ouch.
honestly, I'll spend $1 or $2 too. It's a good deal sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
It's like if you have a laptop but no internet and no cable, there you go. There's your movie option.
Yeah.
But yeah, streaming is
So-
definitely the hot topic among businesses and consumers. So especially with Disney Plus just coming out, Peacock coming
It
soon.
sucks. How many?
I didn't like Disney Plus.
Disney Plus has had so many errors already.
I mean,
Oh yeah, but
let's
you can
talk
tell they've
about-
already had a few issues.
Talk
They've
about
already.
cybersecurity. They leaked everyone's passwords within the first 7 days of the service being
Oh,
out.
you knew there was going to be issues with it.
I mean, that's kind of what we're like. I think we're all trying to get to here is like, man, 7 days.
Wow.
It took a hacker 7 days to get passwords from millions of people from Disney.
I mean, it's kind of interesting because, you know, kind of going back to your point, I think just like you've got that challenge between the business people and the marketing or, you know, people like yourself and kind of coding, I think you also have the challenge between the consumer and their expectation
Oh, of course.
and what the business as a whole wants to, you know, offer, wants to give. I mean, here we are. Disney Plus is a great platform. And again, kudos to all the people that came up with the idea and put in the work and put in the time. But when I'm trying to watch Home Alone and I can't even finish the Home Alone because the whole thing shuts down, I didn't like that.
Thankfully, I haven't
no.
had that happen to me. I haven't had most of the issues that people complain about. So thankfully, I've gotten a look in that regards. But I can
Well,
definitely
yeah.
see some of the issues, like
I
some
tried
of the
logging
features
in
that they're missing.
3 times the other night. It wouldn't even let me log in.
Oh wow.
Maybe there's an issue with the internet.
All right, we're gonna have to get on Spectrum for that, I guess.
Yeah, it was a fun tangent. So actually, I have a question, and
Sure.
you know, going back to the whole tech space of Orlando, what do you guys, whoever wants to go next,
Probably me.
probably be you.
Yeah.
What do you see as what do you predict for the next 5 to 10 years in the tech space? What do you see happening?
Ooh, that's a really good one.
And it doesn't have to be necessarily in your particular field. It could be in tech space in general.
I'm glad you're going first on that one.
Oh yeah, no, that's a very open menu. I definitely see AI growing a lot more, and people trying to utilize AI in definitely in a lot of different ways. I've seen that.
So
growing
for
a
the
lot.
listeners that aren't tech people, describe some of the components of AI.
AI is artificial intelligence. So instead of having a human write the code that runs the program, it's a computer making its own code to make itself more efficient. So right now, I would say it's more of its infancy. You know, people trying to get their hands wet and see what can they do with it. One of the interesting things that I was reading about AI is that it's actually picking up on our human bias. So when you start feeding it these large, massive data sets, these data sets are biased because they were brought in by humans. So I thought that was very interesting, and how they're trying to deal with those kind of issues. So I thought that was very interesting. Another big trend, the cryptocurrency was definitely growing, and seeing how some people are embracing it, some people are not trying to embrace it. So seeing how that continues is also going to be very interesting.
So funny that you say that. Orlando was one of the first cities that really caught on to the whole Bitcoin. They actually have a Bitcoin machine, a couple of them downtown, where if you own physical Bitcoin, you can go and exchange it there.
Oh, is that like an ATM?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know how popular it is or how well it's used. I've never used it, but I know that there's not a lot of cities that have really adopted that and have gotten behind it. And I know Orlando is pretty early on that.
Yeah, definitely. Another big one is transportation, different ways of transportation. You know, you see Teslas, you know, coming out with the truck now. You see all the different scooters we got, and even the LimeWire bikes that we have, you know, that are, you know, help us power. You know, there's a lot of solutions that are across the industry. That's a great thing about technology. You can literally apply it to any industry you want, any kind of use.
Yep.
To help anybody from the administrators to the lower level, you know, workers. It's just up to our imagination to implement that, and again, the time and resources to actually do that.
Yeah. So I know, Shelby, I know you're really big in that whole politics and transportation and all that. Why don't you elaborate on that transportation piece that he just said?
Well, I don't know if I can necessarily elaborate on that specific thing, but I can definitely tell you that that was a conversation Xavier and I had when we were coming up with how we wanted to approach the tech sector and interviewing people in that area. And one of the things is we didn't want to just talk with what people first think of as tech people, as like people who deal with phones and computers. We wanted to talk to everyone, you know, whether it's just, you know, the medical sector or transportation. I know we definitely are eager to get people from Sunrail in here. We're eager to get people from Lime in here, that kind of thing, like talk to them about what they do and what they predict for that, because I agree with you. I think transportation is a huge thing that has been kind of like dragging a little bit and mostly pushed by privatized business here in Florida, especially Central Florida.
Yep.
I do think that there's going to be a political push in that here in the next like 5 to 10 years, because we are taking a huge change in that. So
I did my part, guys. I made an Instagram video and petitioned that Lime needs scooters.
I saw that. That
I think
was
that's the thing
funny.
now. It's coming.
I know.
It's a little more than that. You know, you gotta call your representative a lot of times.
He made me laugh so hard when I saw that. He was like, were you on the bike?
We were on a
You were
bike.
like, why don't we have scooters? You were like calling out Lime. I was like, is Lime even going to notice this? I don't know. I really wanted that to happen.
You'd be surprised. Sometimes they're right back on their customer reviews or on social media. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I voted on their app. They asked me to vote for scooters. I voted.
Your one vote
guys,
counts.
remember,
It counts.
I voted.
Hey, that's important. They're looking for feedback and analytics data.
Yeah.
And I
They're
think
trying to
also,
make-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, they're trying to make data-driven decisions, and that's something that a lot of companies are trying to do. And I hope that trend continues, because you know, knowing what consumers want and going with that trend is important.
Well, it's a direct data decision versus like a, you know, let me see how my user is interacting with my website. See, you know, that's very indirect and non-conclusive.
Yeah, like A/B testing, for instance.
Exactly. So, you know, it's much better to get like not necessarily face to face, but direct conversation going with your
For sure.
demographic.
I'm going to give a shout out to Lake Nona, because recently they were, I hope I say this correct, fact check me, I'm not claiming it's the fact of the fact, but Lake Nona was the first place to, like, I guess city, I don't even know what they are, I guess it's a city, that has
I guess it's a city.
I guess it's a city. Now it's like a medical city now. They were the first place to implement self-driving buses, like transportation shuttles.
Those
Interesting.
And I've
pretty
seen
impressive.
them out there at that tech building, and that's really cool stuff. And Orlando
A little scary,
happened to be the
but awesome at the same time.
Well,
That is
self-
impressive.
Self-driving cars is the future. Imagine a future where we don't need our driver's license anymore. Where like you only need it for special equipment. Like,
I just
you know,
felt like
heavier machinery.
goosebumps go down my back. I don't know if I really like the idea
No.
of that
Right?
just yet.
But
that's-
literally, the first thing that came to my head was, okay, so what are we going to implement to make sure that if something does happen, that the person in the vehicle knows how to troubleshoot?
Guys, this is
And
the
there'll probably
planner
be
here.
some sort of certificate or some sort of like class at least to be like, look, this is what you're going to be driving. Here's how, like, if for some reason something breaks, you can at least understand how to fix it. Or
Yeah, there's definitely gonna be
It's gonna be-
steps and
yeah.
growing pains for sure.
instead of a license, you're getting a mechanical certificate.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're almost out of time. So to wrap this up, you know, we've talked about a lot of really interesting things today. We've talked about some of the challenges you guys faced and dealing with, you know, bureaucracy and how, you know, some of the software engineers out there and dealing with your company leaders, you know, the sales team, the business team, and how all that sort of works together. We've talked about, you know, cybersecurity. We've talked a little bit about automation and that being, you know, a trend, not only, you know, worldwide, in the U.S., but specifically here in Orlando, and then talked a little bit about transportation. So there's definitely a lot of moving pieces there.
Mhm.
Is there any finishing points that either one of you guys want to make about anything we've talked today?
No, sounds pretty good.
So to wrap things up here, I just want to say thank you to both of you. I think you
Thank
guys
you.
are doing
No,
awesome.
thank you guys for inviting us.
You guys are doing some really cool
Absolutely.
things. Yeah, like what is it? And this is my last wrap-up question.
Sure.
What is it that where do you see yourself in your career 10 years from now? 5 years. Let's make it easy. 5 years.
I eventually want to get back into the gaming space because that's originally what got me into software development.
Cool.
Is I wanted to be a game development, but I fell into mobile development, so kind of been doing that since. I'm running that as my career, but definitely wouldn't mind getting back into maybe game development and making my own games of varieties.
That's freaking
That's
awesome.
awesome. And how about you?
I think getting Solvera IT really established in Orlando as pretty much the #1 IT provider out here, period.
Cool.
We want to take on everything and really push the envelope of where IT can go for small and medium-sized businesses. And I think it all starts with the right mindset going forward. And so
A lot of businesses need help, man. Like just educating people in general and just how to make their businesses better.
That's something that I definitely love. I think we're all young professionals, so I think this is a good closing point. We're all young professionals, but not everybody actually has those growth goals. Not everybody is motivated to do more, to contribute more. And I think, the point that was made is that, of course, technology is definitely a large part of moving and shaping really everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's exciting to have, two bright guys that both have skills that are a part of developing what that future is going to look like here in Orlando. So I definitely commend you guys and thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having us.
thank you guys.
I wish you luck on your endeavors, guys. I really
Cool.
do.
I wish you
Cool.
luck for this podcast. I
Cool.
hope to be back.
Thank you.
Cool.
Speaking of growing pains.
Yeah.